Keanu Reeves noticed a pregnant woman working tirelessly at a gas station, her small child curled up on an old chair nearby. What he did next will leave you speechless. The city at night was eerily quiet. The bustling daytime sounds seemed to fade away. The hum of car engines grew sparse, and the distant honk of a bus melted into the cold air of winter. A breeze swept through, carrying the sharp scent of gasoline, damp asphalt, and a faint sweetness wafting from a 24/7 donut shop across the street. Beneath a flickering old LED billboard featuring the face of a rising pop star stood a small, worn-out gas station. The green neon lights flickered intermittently, casting uneven shadows on the cracked pavement. In the distance, a few cars zipped by, pausing briefly before hastily leaving, abandoning the station to the chill of the night. In that moment of stillness, the deep, throaty rumble of a motorcycle broke the silence. A sleek black bike glided under the flickering lights, ridden by none other than Keanu Reeves, a face recognizable to nearly everyone. But tonight, he was without an entourage or bodyguards. Clad in a simple leather jacket, jeans, and a lightweight helmet, his wary posture suggested he had just stepped off a film set or finished a long day of charity work. He stopped the bike, switched off the engine, and removed his helmet, revealing a calm and understated demeanor, devoid of any pretense. Tonight, Keanu was here for a simple purpose: to refuel and wrap up a long day, seeking a private moment of peace in a city that never truly rests. Under the wavering light, Keanu's gaze landed on a black woman standing behind the gas pump. Her name, Ebony, was stitched in small, faded letters onto the chest of her old blue uniform. She appeared to be around 5 or 6 months pregnant, her movements slow and heavy, though she worked hard to maintain a composed demeanor, as if exhaustion were merely a tattered cloak draped over her shoulders. Her uniform, though faded and frayed at the collar, was clean and neatly pressed, a testament to someone striving to preserve dignity in the face of relentless hardship. Nearby, on an old plastic chair, Malcolm, Ebony's 5-year-old son, lay curled up in a thin blanket, half asleep. In his tiny hands was a stuffed animal with a tattered ear, likely a treasured gift from volunteers at a community center. The boy stirred slightly, coughing softly, before slipping back into his restless slumber. Ebony glanced at him occasionally, her eyes filled with a mix of worry and tenderness, yet she remained focused on her work. She cleaned the windshield of a car that had just pulled in, offering a polite smile to the customer who didn't bother to thank her or leave a tip. Keanu stood by, the sound of gasoline rushing into his tank filling the silence as he observed the scene. A young mother, soon to become a mother of 2, valiantly enduring the unforgiving harshness of the city. No glamorous stage, no flashing cameras, only the quiet struggle of a human being against life's merciless demands. Amid the whistling hum of engines and the whistling wind, Keanu's eyes met Ebony's. In hers, beneath the veil of exhaustion, he caught a faint but undeniable glimmer, a spark of hope and resilience. He had only stopped to refuel on his way home, but now a heavy question weighed on his heart. In this city of dazzling lights but cold indifference, who truly deserves to be heard? Keanu lingered for a moment, the night air brushing past his collar, sending a shiver through his body. His gaze shifted to Malcolm, the 5-year-old boy asleep uneasily on the plastic chair, clutching a fragile blanket. The boy coughed again, a soft, feeble sound, like a tender bud quivering in a storm. Keanu frowned, his eyes lingering on the boy's small, flushed cheeks, tinged red from the cold. A child his age should be sleeping in a warm bed, not out here in the freezing night, forced to accompany his mother at work. Suddenly, a harsh voice shattered the stillness of the night. "What kind of service is this? I don't have all night to wait." A portly, middle-aged man in a sharp business suit stepped out of a sleek silver car. The gas station's lights glinted off the polished vehicle, highlighting his flushed face an irritated expression. Ebony hurried over, one hand supporting her belly, the other clutching a rag. "I'm so sorry, sir. I'll take care of it right away." Her voice was gentle, but the fatigue was unmistakable. The man didn't relent, crossing his arms and glaring at her with disdain. "You'd better hurry up. Unbelievable. How does a company even hire people like this?" Ebony lowered her head, her hands trembling slightly as she wiped the windshield. "I deeply apologize for the inconvenience, sir. It'll just take a moment more." Keanu stood at a distance, watching everything unfold. His gaze darkened, his brows furrowed deeply as he observed Ebony's quiet endurance. She didn't argue, didn't defend herself, just silently continued her work, as though she had grown used to such criticism. The man kept grumbling, but Ebony remained silent, finishing the job and giving him a slight nod before moving on. She walked briskly toward another pump, unaware that Keanu's eyes followed her every step. Keanu could feel the weight of injustice and pressure Ebony was carrying. It wasn't just the burden of her job, but the harshness of a society that often overlooks people like her. A strong sense of urgency swelled within him. He knew he couldn't just stand by. Ebony needed someone to stand up for her, to remind her that she was worthy of respect and support. Near the gas pump, Ebony turned slightly, sensing a gaze filled with concern. Keanu's gentle voice broke the silence. "Are you okay?" She flinched slightly, startled. Before her stood a man whose face seemed familiar, though she couldn't immediately place it among the fleeting glimpses of magazine covers or TV shows she rarely had the time to watch. His calm, understated demeanor made her uneasy. "I'm fine, thank you," she replied, her tone tired yet polite. For a brief moment she hesitated, unsure of how to respond. She was so used to customers who didn't care that this simple courtesy caught her off guard. Suddenly, a sarcastic chuckle broke the moment. Darren, her male co-worker, had just recognized Keanu. "You're in luck, Ebony. Got yourself a celebrity's attention. Might even score something out of it," he said, his words laced with teasing and a hint of derision. The insinuation, half joke and half taunt, stung Ebony's pride. She lowered her head, her shoulders trembling slightly with shame and helplessness. She didn't want to be seen as someone who took advantage of others or waited for charity. Keanu heard the comment, his eyes darkening momentarily, but he chose to remain silent, unwilling to escalate the situation. As the customer drove away, Keanu quietly placed a small tip on the counter before heading to the nearby convenience store. A few minutes later, he returned with a paper bag containing warm bread and a small carton of milk. He gently set them down on the counter, next to Ebony. "I don't need this," Ebony murmured, shaking her head, her voice hoarse and breaking mid-sentence. Her eyes dropped to the floor, unwilling to meet his. She didn't want to be pitied. The warm aroma of the bread wafted through the cold air, contrasting sharply with the emptiness gnawing at her stomach. Yet she hesitated. Accepting help felt like admitting weakness, and that was something she feared deeply. Keanu smiled gently, his gaze soft and unassuming. He didn't push or insist, simply asking, "Are you really okay?" This time the question felt like a fragile thread touching the deepest corners of Ebony's heart. She remained silent, her eyes tracing the faint lines on the cracked concrete below. Finally, she let out a long, heavy sigh, as if releasing the weight of her burdens. "I'll keep trying," she replied, her voice small but sincere. She didn't mention her mounting debts, the fear of losing her rented home, or Malcolm's persistent cough that had kept her awake for nights. Yet somehow, she felt the man standing before her could sense the struggles she carried. Keanu gently pulled a simple business card from his wallet, devoid of any grandiose design, just a phone number. "If you ever need help, call me," he said, placing it in her hand. Ebony held the card delicately, her fingers gripping it as if it were a fragile leaf. She hesitated, her eyes lingering on the thinly printed number. She hadn't decided yet, unsure how to face this act of kindness. The night stretched on, the wind whispering softly. Malcolm stirred in his sleep, letting out a faint moan, while Keanu's gaze burned steady, like a small, steady flame in the darkness. They stood there, in the desolate gas station, a humble and famous man offering a moment of solace to a single mother struggling to stay afloat. No promises, no debts to be repaid, just a door left slightly ajar. If Ebony could trust this rare act of compassion in a cold, indifferent city, she might find a way to step through. For now, she only nodded faintly, the business card tucked into her hand like a slender thread of hope beneath the flickering neon lights. Later that night, long after Ebony had returned home, it was nearly 3 a.m., but she remained seated on a creaky wooden chair. In her hands was an eviction notice the landlord had slid under her door earlier that morning. The dim light from a small window in her dilapidated apartment cast faint streaks across the stained floor. The harshly printed words on the paper seemed to scream at her. Final payment due. 7 days. Her heart sank. Soon, it wouldn't just be her, but also Malcolm, her fragile little boy, and the unborn child she carried, who might have nowhere to go. Malcolm lay on a thin mattress spread across the floor, coughing weakly but persistently. The sound was like a dagger twisting in Ebony's mind. She pulled a thin blanket over him, her hand gently brushing his feverish forehead as she sighed softly. Almost without thinking, her hand reached into a small drawer, where she had tucked the business card Keanu had given her earlier that evening. She held it up, staring at the neatly printed number. Ebony hesitated. She knew that all it would take was picking up the phone to call, and everything could potentially get easier. But, like a rising tide, her pride and insecurity pulled her back. She was afraid that calling would make her appear weak, reliant on the pity of others. Afraid that the man, despite the sincerity in his eyes, might see her as nothing more than a fleeting tale of misfortune in his otherwise extraordinary life. Shaking her head, Ebony tried to push those thoughts aside. She folded the business card and tucked it deep into her pocket. Yet her gaze drifted to the corner of the table where an old notebook lay. It was the same notebook she used back when she was a student in early childhood education. The pages had yellowed with time but were still filled with notes, lesson plans, and simple drawings she had once sketched. Ebony had never filed her lesson plans and simple drawings she had once sketched. Her fingers brushed the worn cover as memories of brighter days and boundless hope came flooding back. She recalled mornings bathed in sunlight, sitting in classrooms, listening to lectures about nurturing children's development. She had once dreamed of becoming a teacher, bringing joy and knowledge to young minds. But that dream now felt farther away than ever. Pregnant, drowning in debt and forced to bring her son to work late at night, her reality felt like shackles, pulling her further from any chance to change her life. Ebony lowered her head, burying her face in her hands. A single tear traced a silent path down her cheek. She didn't know how to move forward. The business card in her pocket seemed to grow heavier, an invisible burden pressing on her. Should she call? Should she accept help, or continue struggling alone? The question churned in her mind relentlessly, like waves crashing against a worn shoreline. Outside, the faint sound of a car horn echoed from the main road, blending with the biting whisper of the night wind. Ebony knew she needed to decide, not just for herself, but for Malcolm and the unborn child she carried. Yet to overcome her fear and doubt, she needed a reason, a spark to believe that she still deserved help, that she was still worthy of a better future. Keanu returned to the gas station on a night colder than usual. The streets were empty, and the dim neon lights cast faint glows on the cracked pavement. He carried a large paper bag filled with food, milk, and a few children's books with colorful covers. Stepping inside, he didn't have to search long to spot Ebony. She was still there, still tirelessly cleaning car windows for customers. This time, though, her face looked paler, wearier. Malcolm, as always, was curled up on the plastic chair, wrapped in the same thin blanket. Keanu quietly approached and set the paper bag down beside Malcolm, who stirred slightly in his sleep, his small lips murmuring as if calling for his mother in his dreams. Ebony turned, her eyes widening in surprise when she recognized the familiar figure. She hurried over, her gaze falling on the bag. When she realized it contained food and small cartons of milk, her eyes welled up with tears. "You didn't have to do this," she said, her voice trembling. A tear slid down her cheek. "Why are you helping me?" Keanu met her gaze, his expression calm but profoundly sincere. "Because I can," he said in his warm, steady tone, without a hint of hesitation. "And because you deserve to be helped. Don't think of this as charity. I believe in your future, and I'm just trying to help you see it too." Those words, simple yet deeply meaningful, felt like a gust of wind rekindling a flame long extinguished in Ebony's heart. She lowered her head, trying to hide the tears she couldn't hold back. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "No one has told me I deserve anything in a very long time." Keanu didn't respond immediately. Instead, he quietly reached into the bag, pulled out a children's book, and opened it to the first page. "I think your little one will like this," he said softly, placing the book gently beside Malcolm. Ebony sat down, her hands clasped tightly together. After a long silence, she began to speak, her voice shaky but steady. "When I found out I was pregnant with this baby," she rested a hand on her belly, her expression softening for a moment. "Their father left. I've done everything I can to keep things together, but the debts just keep piling up. The landlord sent me a notice saying I have to move out if I don't pay the rent this week." She drew a deep breath, fighting to keep her emotions in check. "I don't know what I'm going to do when this baby is born. I'm already struggling so much with Malcolm. He needs medicine, proper meals, but Her voice broke, strangled by the weight of her burdens. Keanu stayed still, listening intently. He didn't interrupt or offer platitudes because he understood that what she needed most right now was someone to truly hear her. When she finished, her tear-streaked face turned towards him. Keanu spoke gently. "You've done so much, Ebony. Don't forget that you've kept your family together, even in times like this. That alone proves you're stronger than you realize." She looked at him, her eyes wavering between gratitude and lingering doubt. "I don't know if I can keep going. I'm scared I won't have the strength to raise 2 children," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Keanu smiled, his gaze steady and reassuring. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. "Sometimes, all we need is for someone to reach out and remind us that no one has to face everything by themselves. And I'm here to do that for you." Ebony sat there, her trembling hands clutching the edge of a cloth on her lap. Keanu's words resonated within her, like a calm amidst the storm raging in her heart. She lowered her head, struggling to hold back her emotions. When she finally looked up at him, her eyes shone with profound gratitude and disbelief. I don't know what to say," Ebony began, her voice breaking. "It's hard to believe that this is happening. Meeting you, having someone like you help me, it feels like a dream." She took a deep breath as tears slowly streamed down her cheeks. "You have no reason to do this. I'm just a single mother trying to make it through each day. You're a Hollywood star, someone the whole world admires. But you chose to stop, chose to help me." Ebony looked directly into Keanu's eyes, her gaze full of gratitude. "You didn't have to do this. There are no reporters here. no media capturing the moment. You don't need the praise or the applause. But you helped me, quietly and naturally, as if it was the most normal thing in the world for you to do. She smiled faintly through her tears, her voice soft yet steady. I used to think I was unlucky, but now I realize there are good people out there. People willing to reach out without expecting anything in return. And you're one of them. I never thought I'd be fortunate enough to meet someone like you. Keanu listened quietly, his smile unwavering. He leaned forward slightly, placing a gentle hand on Ebony's shoulder, as if to impart some of his strength. Ebony, sometimes luck is just an opportunity. But what matters is that you were brave enough to take it. The rest is up to you, and I believe you can do it. Ebony felt a weight lift from her heart, lighter than she had in years. For the first time in a long while, she realized that life wasn't only about the endless struggles. There were moments when just one person's faith in you could make every burden feel a little easier to bear. And Keanu, with his quiet, genuine kindness, had given her not only help, but also a renewed sense of hope for a brighter tomorrow. In the days that followed, Keanu made sure his promise wasn't just empty words. After that fateful evening, he promptly contacted the charitable foundation he had established, explaining Ebony's situation and outlining a practical plan to support her. He personally arranged for the foundation to cover all of Ebony's rent and living expenses for 12 months, giving her the financial breathing room to focus on preparing for the arrival of her baby. But Keanu didn't stop there. Using his connections, he identified a reputable early childhood education training center where Ebony could study while receiving free childcare support. He even met privately with the center's director to ensure that Ebony would receive the necessary assistance throughout this journey to rebuild her life. Entering the training program wasn't easy for Ebony. Heavily pregnant, caring for Malcolm, and keeping up with the demanding coursework, each day was a test of her physical and mental endurance, yet Ebony refused to give in. She held on to Keanu's words, "You deserve better," using them as a guiding light during her most challenging moments. However, not everyone was sympathetic to her situation. Darren, her former co-worker at the gas station, seized the opportunity to sneer when he heard about the help Ebony received. "Must be nice, huh? Getting saved by the rich," he said, his voice dripping with bitterness. Ebony responded with a faint smile, choosing not to react. Yet, despite her calm demeanor, a small ripple of doubt stirred in her heart. That evening, after finishing her day's tasks, she spent time playing with Malcolm. Under the soft glow of the dim yellow light in their small rented room, the little boy lay beside his mother on the old floor mattress. The 5-year-old chattered endlessly, his eyes sparkling like stars as he shared his big dreams with her. "Mama, one day I'm going to be a doctor. I'll have a huge clinic, and I'll treat you for free," Malcolm giggled, waving his tiny hands in the air as if painting pictures of his imagination. Ebony smiled, her hand gently stroking his soft curls. "What if you don't become a doctor?" she asked, her voice tender and full of love. "Then I'll be a teacher like you wanted to be. Or an astronaut," Malcolm exclaimed, his voice brimming with excitement. "I want to fly to the stars and bring back special gifts for you and the baby." His laughter lit up the dim room, filling it with warmth and joy. Looking into Malcolm's innocent, hopeful eyes, Ebony's heart ached. She knew how beautiful those dreams were, but they were as fragile as the thin blanket draped over him. If she continued to push through a dead-end job, if her future remained defined by eviction notices and meager meals, Malcolm and the baby she carried would never have the chance to make those dreams a reality. In that moment, Ebony felt a clarity she had never experienced before. She could not afford to give up. She had to fight, not just for herself, but for the 2 children who meant the world to her. Malcolm's words, so innocent yet filled with passion, ignited a quiet but fierce flame within her, reminding her of her responsibility to create a better future for them. When the fog lifted, Ebony felt her physians fear and resolve, her spirit lifted with the future for them. "You'll make it, Malcolm," Ebony whispered, her voice trembling. "I promise you." She held him close, her tears falling silently, but her eyes shone with a determination she had never felt before. She knew that no matter how hard the road ahead might be, no matter what others said to tear her down, she would not give up. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was doing everything she could to give her children a chance at a better life. Day by day, Ebony threw herself into her studies. The hours in class not only refreshed her old knowledge, but also rekindled a passion buried beneath years of hardship. The hands-on exercises at the Early Childhood Center revealed her natural talent for teaching. She had a way of capturing children's attention with her gentle, storytelling voice, calming even the most stubborn kids, and inspiring creativity through engaging games. Gradually, the instructors at the center not only recognized her abilities, but also encouraged her to pursue a long-term career in education. She also learnt to trust and feel gratitude toward those who had reached out to help her. But above all, she began to regain faith in herself. She realized that no matter how tough her circumstances, effort and determination could change the future. Whenever she felt exhausted, she thought of Keanu, not just as a benefactor, but as someone who had seen her worth when she couldn't see it in herself. Ebony's slow but steady progress not only transformed her own life, but also brought hope to Malcolm. The little boy gradually began to sense joy and peace returning to their home. For the first time in years, Ebony felt she was moving in the right direction. The road ahead was still long, but now it was illuminated by the light of hope, and she was ready to face every challenge it brought. One spring morning, soft, golden sunlight filtered through the small window of Ebony's modest apartment. She smiled gently as she gazed at the baby boy sleeping soundly in his crib. Her second son, a healthy, vibrant child, was living proof of the difficult journey she had endured and overcome. Across the room, Malcolm was engrossed in a comic book Keanu had gifted him long ago, his lips curled into a smile and his eyes sparkling with youthful joy. More than a year had passed since Ebony first received Keanu's help. Today marked a milestone in her life. She officially completed her early childhood education program and began an internship at a community preschool. For the first time in years, Ebony felt like she was reclaiming the dream she once thought was lost. In the classroom, Ebony sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by playful, carefree children. She told stories, sang simple songs, and played games with them, her radiant smile lighting up not just her face, but her eyes as well. At the back of the classroom, Keanu stood quietly, observing from a distance. He saw a woman who had once been crushed under the weight of life's burdens, now standing tall, shining with her talent and love for children. With a subtle nod, he stepped closer as the class ended. In his hands was a small wooden plaque, intricately carved with the words, "Miss Ebony, a sower of futures." Ebony took the plaque, her hands trembling slightly as she read the inscription. Tears welled up in her eyes, not from sorrow or despair, but from pure happiness. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "But more than anything, thank you for believing in me, even when I had stopped believing in myself." Keanu smiled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I didn't do it, Ebony. You did. This plaque is just a reminder that you're the one who sowed seeds of hope, not just for your own children, but for so many others." As time passed, Ebony found stability in her work. She earned enough to care for her children, raising them in an environment full of love and warmth. Keanu's actions were not just a testament to the power of kindness. They became a source of inspiration for Ebony to spread those same values to others. Now, Ebony was not only a dedicated preschool teacher, but also someone who understood compassion on a profound level. She willingly extended a helping hand to other struggling single mothers, just as she once had been. She shared her story, not to recount hardship, but to prove that with kindness and resilience, any challenge could be overcome. In the gentle light of the afternoon, Ebony strolled through the park with Malcolm and her younger son. Children ran and played around them, their pure laughter ringing out under the clear blue sky. Ebony smiled as she watched her sons, her eyes filled with hope. Her heart was no longer weighed down by burdens, but carried the belief that the future would always be open, as long as one didn't give up. Yet the story didn't end there. There was still one more surprise. Do you remember Darren, the man who mocked Ebony? One evening, Darren sat in his small apartment, scrolling aimlessly on his phone. Suddenly, he stopped at a familiar picture. It was Ebony, smiling radiantly beside her two sons, holding the wooden plaque that read, "Miss Ebony, a sower of futures." Darren sighed, his expression tinged with hesitation. Memories of their days working together at the gas station surfaced, where he had laughed at and belittled Ebony. He recalled her silently cleaning car windows, enduring his jeers and the impatience of difficult customers without a word of complaint. But now, seeing Ebony's remarkable transformation, Darren began to feel regret and shame. He decided to do something no one would have expected. Darren logged into his social media account and wrote a heartfelt post. "I used to work with Ebony at a small gas station. To be honest, I wasn't kind to her. I laughed at her slowness, mocked her circumstances, and believed she would never change her life. But I was wrong. One day, Keanu Reeves showed up. He didn't just pay her rent or help her financially. He saw the potential in her that I, and many others, failed to notice. There were no reporters, no media coverage. He quietly helped her as a true friend. The most remarkable part is that, instead of relying solely on that help, Ebony worked tirelessly to rise above her challenges. She juggled work, school, and raising two kids. She didn't just stand up for herself, she became an inspiration to others. I'm sharing this not to praise Keanu or ease my conscience. I want to highlight that kindness and resilience have the power to transform lives. Ebony taught me the most important lesson. Never underestimate anyone's ability to change their circumstances. Darren's post quickly went viral. Praised for Keanu Reeves flooded forums and news outlets. "A true star doesn't need flashing lights," one comment read. "Keanu has shown that quiet kindness can still move the world." Videos analyzing his actions, interviews and commentaries appeared across YouTube, celebrating his silent but profound impact. At the same time, Ebony's story became a source of widespread inspiration. The media didn't just focus on Keanu but also applauded Ebony, the woman who seized an opportunity and turned it into the driving force that transformed her life. Articles detailing her perseverance and triumph spread across websites and magazines, proving that resilience, paired with kindness, could create a ripple effect that touched countless lives. Ebony is not just a strong mother, but a role model for anyone struggling in life. She has proven that with timely support and relentless effort, anyone can overcome adversity, remarked one article. Ebony began receiving letters and messages from strangers, sharing how her story had inspired them. A single mother from the Midwest wrote, "Thanks to Ebony, I've realized I'm not alone, and that I can create a better future for my son." A young man who had dropped out of school sent his gratitude. "Her story gave me the determination to return to school. I had far fewer challenges than she did, yet I gave up on my education because of a few minor obstacles. Not anymore." Ebony read these messages with deep emotion. She never imagined that her perseverance could have such a far-reaching impact. One evening, after Malcolm had fallen asleep, Ebony sent Keanu an email. I'll always be grateful for what you did for me. But what I never expected was how our story could help so many others. You didn't just change my life. You changed how people see the power of kindness and resilience." Keanu smiled warmly as he read her words. His fingers quickly typed a reply. "Sometimes, all it takes is planting a seed, and life itself will help it grow. You made that happen, Ebony." The story of Ebony and Keanu became a symbol of compassion and faith in humanity. It wasn't just a tale of a Hollywood star or a single mother, but a testament to how small acts of kindness and unwavering effort can ripple outward to change the world. What about you? Have you ever witnessed or experienced an act of kindness that changed someone's life? Share your story in the comments below. Your story could become a source of motivation for others. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like the video, share it, so more people can see the power of compassion, and subscribe to the channel to catch more inspiring stories. Let's spread the message that even the smallest act of kindness today can create a monumental impact on someone's life tomorrow. Thank you for being part of this journey with us.